Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me well. Gonna wait a couple of minutes for people to join and then we start the stream. Buckets in the chat. Hello, hello, man. How are you? Buckets in the charts, in the chat, in the charts, everywhere. Buckets for the win. Buckets for the win. Sounds okay? All right, perfect. Asking you that because I moved my setup away this weekend. I was at a Counter-Strike LAN. So I just wanted to be sure that the entire setup was well put again. Ciao, Learning Scott. How are you, man? Hello, Tupac. Hello, hello. Tupac 98. West Side. That's a gangster name. And yeah, hello, Scred. Scred 38. Are you from Grenoble? So yeah, hello everyone. Welcome for this this public stream. A pre-FOMC stream, making things a little bit trickier, obviously, because usually not the perfect timing to make to take new trades at least. But still, I feel like it's just à côté. Yeah, it's in the name, Scred. But yeah. So yeah, not usually the ideal stream, the most ideal moment to make streams, because obviously we can expect FOMC to be a source of volatility. However, it's a fairly expected one this time, in the sense that I would assume everyone's pretty much expecting to see a 0.25 rate cut. Even more considering the US government shutdown, that basically means that there were no usual data, I would say, and likely would not be surprised to see no major changes and just basically the same decision than last time, which was 0.25. So that pretty much means that if any sources of volatility and overreaction from the market, which tends to be what you want to trade off of FOMC, if there are any trades to take off of FOMC, usually you want to take any kind of overreaction from the market, whether it's a instant strong pump or dump, will likely come from Powell's speech, right? So yeah, still wanted to make a stream today. Last public stream was 20 days ago or something like this, and I wanted to take the time to at least make a solid update on the main things that I'm watching on Bitcoin, which I think has been decently clean in terms of levels and EMA over the past, basically post 1010 crash. The price action has been pretty chaotic. Obviously, we all have this price action from last week in mind, obviously, but beside that, it's been fairly clean in terms of levels respected and things like this. So wanted to discuss all of that with you guys before FOMC, maybe highlight for you guys what I would consider places that need to see some defense, and basically go through H1, H4 and daily time frame. So that's going to be the main goal of the stream today. Bitcoin update, Bitcoin thoughts, and after that, if we have more time, I will take some chat requests. Before the chat request, I will discuss the main alts that I've been focused on and the main things that I've been trading lately. Some setups mostly that I took on the Avon stream last week on Thursday. And in general, I feel like it's been mostly the dynamic that I've had over the past few months, where I mostly sit out on the beginning of the week. And I think last week was one of the first time that we actually got something decent to capture on the Tuesday move to H4 200 EMA. But beside that, over the past few months, I would say 2-3 months, most of the setups that I've triggered were second part of the week setups. So maybe it's going to be the same thing this week again, but in any cases, we'll see. We'll see what we find. So yeah, let's just start the stream. I will start with H1 and I will go into H4 and daily after that. Or in the main levels of interest when it comes to H1 and H4 are pretty much similar, in the sense that, to me, yesterday's retest of the post 1010 crash bounce high. It's a long name for a level, but basically the high that we printed post the crash was retested, denied us. It was shared as a must break level. You can consider that as a resistance, obviously. And basically the idea was, if we fail to defend H1 trend plus break this level, we likely come for the gap fill to H1 100 MA and H1 200 MA, which so far has been defended. And therefore the overall story to me on H1 right now is must hold H1 200 MA and must reclaim H1 100 MA. So that gives us basically 112 that needs to be defended. If lost, I think that we come for the retest of 110.5, 111, which I'm going to highlight on H4 after that. And if we manage to defend this region, break back above 113.5 basically, which was Tuesday's lows before the retest. Not Tuesday's lows because we got these, but basically Tuesday night low before the retest of the resistance. Get back above this region, we are good to at least consolidate, lose H1 200 MA, and I think that we get into a turbulence zone, let's call it that way, and likely we fill this gap into the 110 region. On H1, to me, there is not much that I'm interested in taking in terms of trades. I feel like last week, second part of the week, as I just discussed, H1 trend that gave us basically 108 to 116 was very interesting to trade for anyone who traded over the weekend. But right now, as long as we are stuck between H1 100 MA and H1 200 MA, I don't feel like triggering any trades. And the context with FOMC later in the evening just adds to that. So even if it was not a FOMC day, with H1 stuck in this region, usually it's not the kind of environment where I'm going to be chasing setups. So yeah, keep in mind on H1 that there is a strong fight for 112 in my opinion, and the level you want to see reclaimed for us to be out of the woods on lower time frame at least is the 113.5. It's a nice confluence of what has been a small resistance first, flip support, failed to defend on yesterday's dip, and now it's the confluence with H1 100 MA and H1 trend. So it's a fairly nice confluence on H1, good enough to be a level that you want to see retested and reclaimed, and obviously even more with the retest we've got slightly before New York Open that got denied quite strongly, as we can see. If you're focused on H1, I think that basically what you can do is, if we start losing 112, set some alerts in the 110.5, 111, and you want to see this region defended. And if we start reclaiming 113.5, I feel like you can aim for a retest of yesterday's highs, basically. So let's see how it goes. We can see that we are potentially breaking through it. We're going to keep an eye on the news pre-FOMC to see if there is anything that comes out or not. But yeah, for me, no major trades to take in this situation. And yeah, that's it for H1. Before I continue with H4, if you want to have access to these charts, I just shared them before the stream on Twitter. You have access to them in the update that I shared 30 minutes ago. You have all the charts that I'm discussing right now available, plus the daily chart below. And basically what I just told you guys, the fight for H1 200 MA, if lost H1 110.5, 111, and the overall 113.5 that needs to be reclaimed. So you can have access to these charts if you want through the stream, if you want to watch them as I'm discussing them. Don't hesitate. All right, on H4, a little bit of a cleaner story for me, or at least in terms of focuses and things that I'm watching. Sorry, I'm finishing my coffee. So yeah, we can see clean rejection yesterday, plus so far the incapacity to defend H4 trend and H4 200 MA, not usually the kind of things you want to see. less relevant than usual. Why am I saying that it's less relevant than usual for me? Mostly because the H4 200 EMA is fully flat, which is the same thing for H1 100 EMA, H4 100 EMA. And overall, when I'm watching moving averages, the flatter they are, the less relevant they are to me. The less I'm considering them to have the capacity to be retested. It makes perfect sense when you think about what is a moving average and why we are using them as trend indicators. If they are flat, it basically means that on this time frame and on this period of time, there has been no trends overall, and therefore less relevant in my opinion. So that can explain why we don't see any kind of fight for H4 200 EMA right now. But the loss of H4 trend is another story. And basically we are potentially seeing it right now, but my main update when it comes to H4 is basically that you want to see this region defended alongside H1 200 EMA that I just highlighted on the H1 chart. If it's lost, I think we come for the retest of H4 200 EMA. The same thing than for H4 200 EMA, it's relatively flat, making it less interesting, less relevant. But outside of H4 100 EMA, it's more of this horizontal level that has importance in my opinion when we look back at the price action of the last 20 days. Strong support post crash into the breakdown that came for the retest, nearly the retest of the week low, into resistance, failed support, resistance, and when we broke through it, we went for the next gap fill. So obviously, if you forget about moving averages, if you forget about these imaginary lines and we stick just to simple horizontal levels, this 110.5, 111 region, I believe is an important one to fight for. And the main gaps I have in mind for me is if we start losing this region into / post FOMC, I think we are back into this range obviously, and it kind of sucks for Bitcoin in my opinion. And I would expect us to come for a retest of the range low. If the market really sucks and really shits the bed, then obviously I will be watching for a daily 300 EMA. But first thing first, let's see if this region is retested. Let's see if it's defended. And if it's not defended, all eyes on what was a very clean support resistance flip on horizontal level in the 107, 108 region. So if I sum, so that's the gap to the downside obviously. And for the gaps to the upside, as simple as we have a clear resistance ever since the 1010 crash, and particularly with the retest we've got at the beginning of the week. If this breaks, I think we come for the retest of this entire region. So these are the two other main gap fills to focus on. And basically the way I'm approaching the market short term is that I don't think I particularly want to be participating in this region. But I would be interested in trying to capture these gaps, the one to the downside and the one to the upside up to July high. I would not be too surprised if we end up with a H4 trend disrespected over here and some chalk fest in this region. It's a very wide range, obviously, with basically 111, 116. So maybe we have some interesting setups to take within the range, but we'll see how it goes. The tricky part when we go into FOMC is that I would be interested in longing these retests if it was fueled by FOMC, maybe less before FOMC. Maybe it's more of a trap. Maybe it's trappier to catch and to chase. All I know is that ideally, I think you want to see this region to be defended. And I think it's also quite clear when we'll go into the daily time frame. Yo, thanks. Yo, what's up? What's up, Baguette Printer? Nice to have you around. How are you, man? Aris, hello, Pierre. Did you get on ZEC H4 trends retest with stock RSI reset? Seems like you kind of setups, but the overall market makes me a bit uneasy. Okay, I'm gonna cover ZEC as soon as I'm done with Bitcoin. I did not enter the latest H4 trend retests. I did some Zcash updates in the Haven just before the stream, so I'm gonna be discussing it. But basically, I said that I did not enter the H4 trend retest. not that it was not an interesting setup. As you said, Aris, it was very, I think it was an interesting retest of H4 trend plus stock reset, which, as you said, can be the kind of setups I want to take. The main reason I did not take it is because I was mostly AFK yesterday. When I saw the rejection from what was to me the must break level, I decided that I did not want it to particularly participate yesterday, and basically I went touching grass mostly. So I did not, but I will be covering Zcash as soon as we are done with Bitcoin. As I said, we do chat requests first, then I want to discuss the few shitcoins that I've been focused on, and then we will do some chat requests. So the summarize, that's not English. The summary for me on H4 is, in my opinion, whatever happened into post-FOMC, you want to see this region defended. If it's not for the H4 100 MA region, which again is flat, so less relevant in my opinion, at least because of the way, because of the importance of that horizontal level since the 10-10 crash, basically. We fill the wick, build the base over here, defend it, break down, flip it, resistance, period of consolidation. Makes sense to be a place you want to see some defense, and basically to me likely to be the distinction between chop fest, at least in this region and around the H4 trend that could be disrespected, versus back inside last week range and potential retest of what was a range low for us. So that's the key level to fight for and to watch as we get into / post FOMC, in my opinion. So on H4 personally, I'm gonna set them on this chart, but I have them on another chart. I'm gonna have alerts below this region. If we were to see a week into this region into / post FOMC, I think I would be interested in trying to give it a shot. I'm not quite sure I want to do it now. I'm streaming plus before FOMC. Don't know if I want to take it. And I have alerts obviously above the 116. I'm gonna put another one above 113.5, which is the level I said on H1 that you wanted to see reclaimed, because it's a fairly clean enough level that you want to see a fight for. But yeah, beside that, likely to just let FOMC unfold and see what has been defended, reclaimed or not, and play based on that, basically. So to me, a fairly clear picture. If I had to say one thing that seems to be quite crucial to me is that the entire 111, 113K is a crucial fight. It's a crucial place to fight for. Again, if we forget any kind of moving averages, if we just stick to the price action that we've had over the last 15 days, basically even 20 days since the 10-10 crash, this block seems like a strong one to fight for. And the distinction between retesting 116 again versus retesting 17108 again. So it's the level that you're gonna want to see defended into and post FOMC. And it's a fairly clean story also when we watch into daily time frame. As we can see that it's a fairly strong and important horizontal level, as we discussed. I want to insist on one thing when it comes to these daily charts. I've already said it yesterday, sorry, in the updates that I shared in yesterday's on Twitter yesterday, sorry. I think it was in the daily charts. This was these updates. We're back above daily trend. However, it's hard to give it too much importance considering it's been disrespected since the July leg up. And yeah, that's I've been tagged a few times on CT over the last few days with that daily trend reclaim. As we can see, the daily back above daily trends. I want to be in the team that thinks it's an important step, but I cannot give it too much strength considering the way it's been disrespected basically since May. We've had a couple of weeks at times where it was respected on the way up and on the way down, but overall it's been pretty much at the same value since July, and it's been quite disrespected. Lost, reclaim, lost again, reclaim, lost. Not enough not enough defense of the daily trend for it to be key to me. But it's basically what I told you for H4 100 MA. It's flat, doesn't have to be particularly respected, but because it's in the 111, 113 region, I feel like it's a key place you want to fight for. If I scroll this box to the left, I feel like it's even clearer why I consider this 111, 113K region to be a pivotal level on Bitcoin pretty much since we printed that top in May, basically. And why I think it's a crucial level to fight for, and why I think that defending it versus losing it would give a different outcome of the main things we should expect in the short term. Obviously, we defend it. I think we are good to at least chop fest around it. That's pretty much what I said over here. Potential chop fest / compression in the 112, 116, 117 region versus getting back in this region and potentially coming back again for the retest of these lows post 1010 crash. So I still highlighted where the daily trend is, but it's not necessarily what I've been the most focused on, and it's not. I don't consider it as particularly significant just yet. If we were to see a daily trend, whether it's the upside or the downside, defended a few times and respected, I would give it more strength, but it has not been the case over the past few months, so I just cannot execute anything off of it. And I would say even more that I would say that since May, 90% of the trades I took on Bitcoin were based off of H1 and H4 charts, H1 and H4 triggers, and H1 and H4 trends. As much as the daily trend has not been particularly well respected, we've had some very clean H1, H4 trends. Any leg up that we've had have been fueled off of single H1 trends, basically. And at the moment the H1 trend started to get disrespected, you had clean exits. It's been the case since July, if I'm not mistaken. With obviously July being one of the cleanest we've had. With always very nice entries, and a majority of the updates I've been sharing in the Aven over the past few months has been when we've been defending lower time frame trends, has been make the best of lower time frame trends being defended, and as soon as it's not respected anymore, you back off. And it's been very right. And I kind of feel like it's a good testimony of why trading Bitcoin has been so exhausting over the past few months, and why CT is so depressed, and why, and to again, understandably, why the market has been so shit. When most of the trades, most of the moves to capture on the charts happen on H1 and H4 trends, it basically means that you cannot base most plans off of higher time frames. And if you are AFK for the week where we have a defended H1 trend, you're missing out on all the fun, basically. And it means no strong follow-up, no momentum, and I guess it's what makes things so exhausting to trade. And it sucks, but at least I hope that it shuts off a little bit the people who tend to often say, okay, max pain is up. The amount of time we've seen people discuss how up is max pain in some scenarios, it's never up that's max pain. Max pain is always down and or chop fest. Up is never max pain. Pierre, is it a coincidence when you stream always volatility starts? I don't know if it's a coincidence, but as a superstitious lad like me, as someone that I've become superstitious because of the markets through the years, I'm starting to notice a coincidence. I don't mind too much when we are on windows like right now where there is FOMC ahead, and in any cases I would not trade. But I'm a little bit pissed when it happens when I'm streaming in the Aven, and and basically it's much harder obviously to trade if you're streaming, and I miss some potential entries and or interesting retests while I'm streaming, and I shut the stream off and we bounced or dumped a couple of more percentages, and the setup is gone basically. But I noticed the coincidence also, ZZZ. let's hope for the market that at the moment I shut the stream off in 30 minutes, the volatility stops and or reverses. But yes, I did I did notice that too, yeah. Okay, so main points that I want us to highlight off of this early stream. You probably noticed that whether we are discussing H1, less H1, but whether we are discussing H4 or daily time frame, there is a strong fight to have for the 111, 113 region. Again, if it's not EMA wise, at the very least, horizontal wise, it's a key level. If we base just off of the last 20 days of price action, it's a very important level to fight for. And if we go on the daily, like we just watched, same thing. Basically, ever since July, the 111, 113K region has been a very pivotal level and is key to me. If post FOMC, and I would say even more into / post Trump and Xi meeting, we are still defending this region. I think we have a shot for the next few days to weeks to come for the retest of the September, August highs and July support, which is 118, 119, this entire block over here. While if it's not defended and if it's lost again, my main hypothesis, my main assumption would be a retest once again of 107, 108. But we have quite the upcoming events for the market, volatility triggers, let's call it that way. I don't think that FOMC, this FOMC, is to be considered much of a volatility event. As we discussed at the beginning of the stream, I would assume that 0.25 cuts is a very consensus decision, and I would assume priced in or whatever. Maybe whatever Powell has to say can be a volatility trigger, but I would assume that there is much more expectations on the Trump and Xi meeting that is supposed to happen, if I'm not mistaken, in South Korea. I think I saw a news earlier confirming it. Let me see if I can find the news on the Trump and Xi meeting. What, tomorrow? So I would assume that the outcome of this meeting is likely more important in terms of volatility trigger for the market than these FOMC. Considering again how expected the decision is, maybe again Powell has some things to say that could fist fuck the market, but we'll see. So yeah, 111, 113, defend it, and we have the chance for at least chop fast into a retest of 116 again, lose it, and we watch for a retest of 107, 108 again. Pretty much that. And to me, H4 and daily charts are the cleaner ones to focus on. All right, pretty much my main case, shorter. I don't know if you guys have any questions regarding this H1, H4, and daily charts. If you have any, don't hesitate. Which reminds me that I did not congratulate the 225, 250 of you who voted for the above 110K when I shared this stream. It was 10 days ago, and a majority of you guys were correct, as we are above 110K for this stream. So congrats for those who actually voted on that. But let's see if this is still true by the end of the stream. By the rapidity of the way we are moving, maybe by the moment we shut the stream off, it's not true anymore, but we'll see. All right, let's cover the main shitcoins that I've been interested in, and then we'll take some chart requests. I will start with ZEC, following the question from Aris earlier. So the question from Aris, here is basically the main things that I've been watching. So this was a setup taken from last week's stream in the Haven. Let me see if I can find the original chart. Okay, so this was our main idea following last week's stream. During last week's stream on ZEC, we had a very classical H4 trend, H4 100 MA compression on ZEC, And the main idea was we want to see H4 100 EMA defended. If it's defended into H4 trend reclaim, we have an opportunity for a retest of the 300 region, in which case I would be interested to take the setup if we have the retests and take a majority of the setup of above 300 in the local highs region, and basically do nothing in between. Do nothing in between. And obviously the difference was that if we start losing H4 100 EMA, I would have been aiming for a retest of H4 200 EMA. Over the weekend, we got a breakthrough H4 trend, and H4 100 EMA was defended, and we broke through H4 trend, which triggered the setup. I think it was on I think it was 24. That was on Friday. Yeah, Friday afternoon. Follow up of the stream. Trigger of the setup. We have a break of H4 trend and H4 100 EMA defended. We'll cut if it's lost or if Bitcoin shows weakness. And I ended up taking some off all the way up to 307. So this was the last TP, basically. And the question I had from Aris was, did I take the compounding off of these retests? In my system, this was a very interesting compounding to take, because as Aris said, we had retest of H4 trend plus H4 stock reset. For those not aware, I have a kind of setups that I usually call A+ setup in a trend following approach, where if I have a retest of the trend that I'm focused on plus H4 stock reset, and we have defense of both, it's a trigger to go for a compounding setup. Ideally, you have the confluence with an horizontal level to play with. That was not particularly the case for this time on ZEC, unless you consider this week to be a significant horizontal level. But yeah, I did not because I did not want it to take it, only because I was AFK yesterday. As I said at the beginning of the stream, yesterday when I saw the rejection from our must break on Bitcoin, I decided that I did not want it to participate in the market. Rejection from resistance with FOMC 24 hours later was enough for me to consider that I was not particularly inclined to trade. So I decided to go touch some grass. Actually plan the ski season, so plan to touch some snow. But as Sari said, it's the kind of setup I could have taken. And what's next for me on Zcash? So for me, and you can see it in the chart, and you can see it in what I shared, I have moved the stops from this entry around the H1 200 EMA region. If I wanted to be precise, it's actually slightly lower H1 200 EMA in case it comes for the retest. And I'm gonna let it develop a little bit, see if it continues to defend H4 trend before considering new setups. But basically, I would not be surprised if, as long as H4 trend defended, we see some sort of consolidation between the highs printed at the beginning of the week and H4 trend. So the main idea for me would be, you want to see H4 trend still defended. If it's not defended, I think we come for the retest of the 255 to 70 region once again, and particularly H4 100 EMA. We have some nice confluence now in this region with what has been strong resistance mid-October and until last week. But if we defend H4 trends, I think we have some compression incoming between H4 trends and the local highs. A next trade I could consider, the two next trades that I can think of is H4 trend defended and we compress like this. As I said, I would be inclined to take a position in this region, for example. Even more obviously, if we see some strength for Bitcoin, actually I should start with that. If Bitcoin still defends 111, 113 region into the end of the week, and we have this kind of compression on ZEC, I feel like I would be interested in taking a position on this kind of compression going into the end of the week. A little bit like the long we took on Friday last week, betting on some end of week strength from Zcash, particularly as long as Bitcoin defends 112 and 111, 113. So that could be a first setup, could look like this, for example. I don't know yet, but just to give you an idea. And if I was to miss this, or if it was to not compress and just break through the highs, I would really love to have the opportunity to long a retest of this region, ideally with the defense or confluence of H4 trend. This would be an ideal setup. So in that situation, if I want to compound on my long, you likely see it just based off the setups. I would be very much fine to do so higher than in current region. I would be more interested in betting in compression and or strength than trying to play around right now, especially with POMC around the corner, obviously. So that's the main idea if we have continuation. And obviously, if we start losing H4 trend plus H1 200 MA, I will cut the rest of the position and I will wait for the next development on H4. Keeping in mind these kind of developments that we've had at the beginning of October, where we have a leg up of H4 trend starts to get disrespected, and we have some chop fests after that. Basically, if H4 trend starts to get disrespected / lost, like on the fractal that I just shared, I would take the rest of the position off and wait for potential retest of this region. While at the opposite, obviously, if we have a defense of H4 trends, I would be expecting continuation. So just to keep things simple and to answer Aris one last time, I did not take the setup, not because it was not interesting, just because I was not trading the market yesterday. And I'm personally focused on H4 trends and want to see if H4 trend continues to be defended or not before considering new setups. So that's the main story for me. And I think, once again, that in terms of continuation, the two main trades to take is either on a H4 trend defense and compression with the highs, or on simply a break through the highs into continuation, obviously. So I'm going to set some alerts with you guys in the highs. I'm going to set some alerts around the H1 200 MA, which is in this region. And we see if any of these trigger or not. In any cases, Zcash has been a great focus lately, and I guess it makes sense considering that it's been one of the very few that has been delivering some trendy behavior, obviously, actually some nuts trendy behavior when we consider it was trading at 58, 60 a month ago, basically. So as a trend trader, we just go where the trending behavior is, especially when daily Bitcoin looks like this. If you have a place where you have more trendy behavior, focus on this, because instead of focusing on this kind of daily price action. Okay, and yeah, forgot to say it, but if you don't want to be playing with the shenanigans of lower time frame, I feel like daily 13 EMA is likely a very, very good focus to have on Bitcoin. It's been defending all the way since $40. And if you are a usual watcher of the stream, you should know that for me in the system, the more 13 EMA is defended on any kind of time frame, the stronger the trend, the more I tend to give retests importance. And in that case, 13 EMA has been insanely perfectly defended. So there is a world where if we lose H4 trend and I'm out of this position, I could flip into the daily and just wait for a daily 13 EMA retest to have an entry. But we'll see how it goes. We are not quite there yet. That was mostly the idea for now. If you do get back to H4 100 MA, it will be flat. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was about to say, and why I would more focus on the daily 13 EMA. There would be 3 arguments for me to be a little bit more hesitant. Actually, 4. The 4 main arguments that would make me hesitant into playing such a retest would be: 1, that H4100MA would be flat if it was to be retested in current situation, as Arav Garg said. The second one would be that H4 trend would be lost, and not particularly a fan of playing against the H4 trend. The third argument would be that it would be the third tap, making it less interesting. The second one was already less interesting to me than the first one, but it goes hand in hand with the idea of H4100MA to be flatter. If it's retested 3 times in a short period of time, obviously it's going to be flatter and flatter as it goes, because it means that it's been less trendy. And finally, the last argument is that the daily looks good enough to focus on the daily. So, and to be honest, this was already arguments that I had last week when we were discussing this setup on stream. I had a question on stream in the oven asking me why I didn't want to position myself in this region. And the main reason was I would much rather see some strength when H4100MA defended once again into a reclaim than bet on H4100MA to be defended a second time, basically. Let's take a quick look at H4 close. Yeah, not the sexiest. With this H4 close on BT is quite shit. H4 trend lost, H4 200MA not defended. Sorry, clearly not ideal. Clearly not ideal. Gonna have to show some strength real quick in the 110, 111 if we want to see some defense. Can you please discuss Tiao? Yeah, we're gonna discuss it after that if you want. When looking for compound setup, would you ideally like to entry on H4 trends 25? Yes. Let's take let's keep on ZEC as an example. The more 13 EM, the stronger the trend, obviously, the more inclined and interested I am in chasing compounding setups. Because obviously, as I said, the stronger the trend, the more I can rely on it, and the more I have, the bigger the chance to be rewarded into playing it, and also the bigger the invalidation if it fails. In the sense that if a trend has been strong and you compound on it a couple of times, then it starts being disrespected. The argument you had before, betting on the compound on the trend retests, is just as good to stop doing so and back off if/when it stops being defended, right? So the stronger the defense of the trend, the more inclined I am. And in that case, as I said, the more 13 EMA is defended, the more interested I am in compounding. And another example is the retest we've had on SEC this weekend on H4, right? It's still a H4 trend retest, but you can see 13 EMA not defended. It chops around it. So Baguette Printer, they're not necessarily 25 or 13 or 32 in general. Just I will be more aggressive based on which one has been defended the stronger and the nature of the trend in itself. If an asset tends to retest the trend fully on every time it retests the trend, I will be more interested in longing 32 EMA retest, which is basically the last point for the trend to be defended. But if it's been defending 13 EMA more than anything, I will try to focus on it. And I will consider the break of 13 EMA a strong enough signal that the trend needs to reset and or chop fast around in the short term. And I'm saying 13, but obviously whatever you use between 10 and 30 is just good enough. I'm using 13, 25, 32 because it's values I've been working with since the UOB days, basically. But obviously, it's just imaginary lines on the chart. The story is likely exactly the same if you use 10 to 30 and not 13 to 25. If I put 10 and 30 here, it's gonna print the exact same story, right? It's pretty much the same idea. Never forget, it's just imaginary lines on the chart, right? Okay, so I guess daily 13 EMA is the best indicator for Zach if we lose H4 trend. Yes, Aravarg, you get it perfectly right. It's exactly that. To me, the main conclusion is exactly that. And I would add that considering that H4 trend has been violated a few times during the over the past 20 days on ZEC, the less it's cleanly respected, the more daily should be your focus. Because the more it's gonna be trickier to position yourself on H4 trend retests versus daily trend retests. In general, when I'm playing trends and I'm focused on riding a trend, I'm gonna try to be focused where the trend is the more cleanly defended, which is basically what I said earlier when we discussed the Bitcoin, and when I said that I was not putting too much relevance into the daily trend reclaim on Bitcoin because daily trend has not been particularly well defended, and because every moves we took on Bitcoin over the past few months have been fueled by H4, H1 trend more than daily trend. So I always try to just focus where the trend is the more defended, obviously, which I guess makes sense if you are a imaginary lines aficionado like me. Okay. Let's see how things develop. And if that's it for the question on Zcash, let's move on to the next one I've been watching closely. In terms of setup I took last week, there was a nice trade on AVNT that we took also last week on stream and after the stream. Where was the charts? That was the setup. To explain it a little bit, I'm usually a big fan of this kind of compression you see on the left over here. I have this educational article in the Haven where I discuss how the usual gap fill plays out and basically what I tend to focus on. Just to remember, maybe for people who are new to the stream, the main components of my system is the repetition of a 3-part cycle. The first part is EMA compression. EMA compression leads to trendy behavior. And when the trendy behavior stops, so when the trend you've been focused on stops, gap fills. And gap fills mean from trend to 100 MA, 100 MA to 200 MA, 200 MA to 300 MA, basically. And then when these are done, EMA compression, and we repeat the cycle. And the main idea for me in my system is to know what are the early signals of each of these parts and how I want to trade them. And we've seen in these parts the last 2 points. So the trendy behavior, you can see on the left that H4 trend has been insanely clean on AVNT. You have basically ever since it broke at 1.8, it flipped resistance and it acted as resistance all the way down since 0.53. Then breaks the H4 downtrend, fills the gap to 100 MA, get denied, compress between H4 trend and H4 100 MA. And usually these are the kind of small compression I like to play because it's a textbook 100 MA trend compression. And I like this kind of compression because I feel like they give fairly clean invalidations in the sense that if 100 MA continues to act resistance and H4 trend breaks, which is basically just a triangle, right? Then you just get out of the position. And if it's defended and if you have 100 MA broken plus H4 trend defended, you have very clean targets. So the main idea we had was H4 100 MA must break. And the idea was tight enough to position yourself before the breakout. If we start losing H4 trend and H1 EMA get out, and it likely comes for the retest of the lows. But if it starts to break, you have an opportunity to catch a move all the way up to H4 200 EMA 100 SSMA, which have been the main targets basically. So that was a very clean one. in my opinion. It basically get delivered the 50%. Not the kind of trades that I'm gonna be taking on big size, obviously. I'm usually going for vastly reduced size on these kind of trades. One, because it tends to be a fairly liquid one, or at least fairly wiki one. Not that I need a lot of liquidity. I'm a small fish, right? Just the more liquidity, the less chances to see big wicks. And because if I'm aiming to capture a 30, 40, 50% move, I don't need to have the entire house bet on the trade, right? I can have a vastly reduced size, and if I get all my targets, I am rewarded more than enough. So that was a fairly decent trade, fairly decent one. Very happy it played that way. Absolutely have no idea why it went that way. And to be honest, I kind of took a gamble, because it's perfectly fine not to position yourself before the decision was taken. You can very much let the compression happen. And actually, it's what I did on ZEC. It was a much smaller compression, but you had also a H4 100 MA, H4 trend compression on ZEC. And in that case, I preferred to wait and wait for the breakout or the breakdown before positioning myself. On AVNT, I was pretty fine positioning myself before. The main reason why how compressed it was and how clean the compression was. So I was okay. The two main reasons, was compression being extremely clean, and the fact, as I said, that I'm taking these trades on vastly reduced size. I'm fine taking the gamble in that case. And I was a little bit of worry also that compared to something like ZEC, it would move very fast to the gap fill as soon as it broke H4 100 MA, which it kind of did. So I prefer to position myself and gamble a little bit more than waiting for the breakout and for the retest of H4 trend, basically. Could you please discuss Zen and Dash? I will. So I don't have much left time for the stream, but I will be covering TAO because it's been asked, and Zen and Dash. I'm not gonna take any more chat requests beside TTWO, which is strat fee. I'm gonna stick to this for now because I don't have. I'm likely not gonna have time to cover more than this, so I don't want to do half-empty promises. But I will be streaming again once again on YouTube periodically. So even if we don't have the time to do a lot of chat requests, next week FOMC will be gone. The Trump and Xi meeting will be gone. Maybe we will have more time to do a full chat request dedicated stream next week. We'll see. But I will try to have this covered by the end of the stream. How to know when compression has finished? Single candle close above AMA 100 MA, or you prefer trend above 100 MA? I wish I had a perfect answer for you. Yeah, I can cover hype because it was another setup from stream last week, but this one I did not take it, but still it's worth discussing it. I wish I had a perfect answer for you, Sag, in terms like a strict rules that says that you want to have one candle close above or whatever. The truth is that it's rarely how it goes, whether you trade with moving averages or horizontal level or whatever. It's complicated to have a strict rule on that. At least to me it is. In terms of execution, I find it complicated. However, as you said, to me, when we have trend above 100 MA in those kind of situation, and ZEC once again was a very good example of that, it helps in the trigger because to me it helps in the invalidation. In terms of when I take this setup on ZEC, I know that if it gets topped out, it means that both H4 trend and H4 100 MA are not particularly well respected. And even if it's not going to dump back to H4 200 MA, at the very least, I'm with H4 trend and H4 100 MA not very well respected. Do I really care to be in a position right now and straight away? What are the odds that even if we don't go back to H4 200 MA, we at least chop fast around the two? Quite big in my opinion, at least because trend wise and trend indicator wise, they are not respected. So to me, I like when we have trend above 100 MA in those kind of situations because it helps for the invalidation and therefore it makes the execution easier for me. my monkey brain is gonna be my monkey brain is gonna be more inclined to respect the invalidation when I have this kind of confluence. So there is no perfect rule in terms of do I want to have one candle close above. But in terms of structure, the more they are compressed, the more they are in confluence, the easier it is in terms of invalidation for me. Now, I would also say that when something looks so clean and when something has respected the system so well, like this is quite nuts in terms of how well the moving averages have been respected in that compression. I will consider that this candle close on H4 over here is more than enough to signal strength. When we are in a situation where it's been more tricky and maybe less clean than that, maybe I will wait for a little bit more confirmation and trend above H4 100 MA, as you said, SAG. But as you noticed in the way I explained it, it's very contextual. And I guess it kind of summarized trading quite well and executing trades quite well. But yeah, to me, it's pretty much that. In any cases, if you need to keep one thing in mind for these trades, is that if you ever find something that looks like this, keep in mind that what you want to have for this setup to be interesting is 100 MA resistance, trend defended, and ideally, the wider the gap to the next moving average. The wider the gap to fill to 200 EMA, the bigger the outcome of your bet, basically, and the more interesting it is to play the setup. If 200 EMA was at 0.08, it would still have been a decent gap to chase, but obviously aiming for $1 was an even more appealing setup. And I'm gonna what can I use for that? No, I think it's a decent example. It's a decent example already. Oh, we have H4 100 being retested. Yeah, it's been tapped. Not yet, but quite close to it. In any cases, whatever happened, even if we defend this region, this is not the kind of follow-up we wanted to see short term. So we'd see if FOMC is enough to reverse that. I would assume that you can find at least 10 posts on CT right now saying you would much rather see Bitcoin in the red before FOMC than into FOMC, just as much as you will have the other half of your feed saying that Bitcoin is front running and that it's a bad time for the market. I have no idea personally. Okay, let's do hype and then I will do the rest of the chat requests. Where is hype? Hype is a setup I did not take, unfortunately. This is another setup from stream last week, but this one I did not trigger. I missed it, unfortunately for me. In the chat requests, I had 3 setups that were particularly highlighted at potential setup to take short term. Hype was in one of them, but I did not take it. And the idea was fairly straightforward. We want to see H4 close above H4 100 MA, and we want to see both of them flip support if retested. And if you have a retest of both, you have an argument for a setup to aim for H4 200 MA and H4 300 MA. The main reason, the 2 reasons I did not take the setup, the first one is that I simply missed the retest when it happened. I had no alerts and I totally missed it. And the second one is that it looked less clean to me. EMA wise, you can see compared to AVNT earlier. On AVNT, we had H4 trend very well respected, a very clear compression. In that case, it was a little bit messier. And the gap to 200 EMA was much smaller. So it's the reason I did not trigger the setup. But in the end, it was a good setup for those who caught it. You can see the end target that's been flipping resistance quite nicely. But yeah, I did not take this setup, but that was basically the setup discussed on the stream last week. I wish I took it, obviously, but I did not. It was a nice 20% move to capture on hype. Probably the thing I'm a little bit mad about from last week, fortunately. But it is what it is. Can't catch them all. I can complain with AVNT and ZEC. already had enough to feed the family, but it's always, I mean, it's much easier to think that way. You're always mad when you come back to a setup that you thought about and did not trigger and it went for a win. And you're always like, oh, fuck, I should have taken that. And you're mad at yourself. But obviously, when it's the opposite, you had a setup long planned, you come back, it stopped. You're not too mad about it. Insight analysis and things you could have done, unless it's something very obvious that was a big mistake, is rarely something valuable to your progress, in my opinion. I took the hype setup but struggled with TP. How would you structure TPs here? For me, when I'm playing these setups, as you can see, maybe it's not clear now, but to me, when I see these kind of charts, my targets are H4 200 MA first, H4 300 MA. And once all of these are triggered, you want to have up to 2/3 of the position taken out. And then you let things develop. And if it's flipped plus H4 trend defended, which seems to be kind of the case right now, you have an argument to look for compounding. But these are the kind of structure where I'm going to base my targets off of the gap fills. So as I said for AVNT earlier, trend to 100 MA first. In that case of hype, it was already done. It was actually the trigger of this being flipped. That was the long. Then 100 MA to 200 MA, 200 to 300 MA. And usually, again, it's not a strict rule. There are going to be cases where I'm going to be playing things differently, but very often I do 1/3 at each. Not 1/3 at each. I take 2/3 up to 200, up to what I consider to be my last target. And I like to keep 1/3 of the position running after that and trailing the stop until the trend is lost. Like I said on Zcash, I have taken 2/3 off since 307 this weekend. This weekend. And then I trail the stop following the trend, either until I take a new setup, either until the trend is lost and I exit fully. But I say that it's not a strict and definitive golden rule, because there are going to be cases where I'm going to be less aggressive in paying myself. But in current market conditions, I tend to be pretty aggressive in paying myself. The main reasons, obviously, are the way the market have been behaving over the past few months and how it's been very punitive to anyone that's not protective his gains. But also because, just like everyone else, or at least just like a majority of the market participants, I would assume at least, I did not have the best trading months of my life in September, and overall it's been decent, but I've been pretty mad at myself, and I think I could have done much better. And when I'm in this kind of situation, I try to build back confidence by being much more aggressive in paying myself, locking wins as they develop, and not thinking twice paying myself until I feel confident to hold for longer, basically. But whenever I am in market conditions that are very punitive, and when I do mistakes, I tend to be much more aggressive in paying myself. So that's why I've tried at least to be very aggressive in paying myself, as I said. So it's not a perfect rule, but I would say a majority of the setup I discuss and trade and take, and share and take, I tend to have up to 2/3 of the position taken out at what would be the last target for me. A good example of that, but I don't think the setup is on my charts again, is a setup I took in August in the Haven, but I don't think it's in my charts anymore. No. It was this retest of H4 300 MA in August. In that case, for example, Baguette Printer, my first target was H4 200 MA, my second target was H4 100 MA, and at this point, basically, if we lose H4 trend, I take the rest fully. If we flip H4 trend, I keep the rest and I try to ride as high as I can. So maybe it's not the most optimal approach. Maybe some people who have much bigger brains than me and are much better in execution would tell you that there are better ways of paying yourself. But I'm comfortable with this approach, so I try to execute it well before overthinking it more than this. Okay, so for hype, because we discussed the setup, but I did not discuss the rest. I'm gonna put this here. To me, it's an idea of defending H4 trend and H4 300 MA or not. I feel like you have a fairly good idea of the level that needs to be broken just based of the last 4 days of price action. It's been very clear that someone is fine paying themselves and unloading their hype into the $50 region. So obviously this is your must break level. I don't think this is a much more of a significant highs. Okay, I will do H4 and the daily. So to me, obvious must break, obvious must hold. Even if we don't think about moving averages, if we just stick to horizontal levels, it's pretty straightforward that this is the place you want to see broken, this is the place you want to see defending. I guess it's pretty straightforward. To me, if H4 trend starts to crack, you have a very good case for a retest all the way down to the EMA in the low 40s. They are not very tight yet enough, but they are starting to curve up and could be interested if they were retested. I'm actually gonna set some alerts into the H4 200 EMA and H4 100 EMA region. But basically, I need to turn the lights on because we switched to winter time this weekend and it's now almost dark when it's 5 p.m. Jesus. Good thing is that the daily closes at 1 a.m. now, which is nice, but it's getting darker and darker. It also means key season is around the corner, so that's good. But basically, must hold H4 trend and H4 300 MA. Basically, it's 46, right? 45, 46. Must break local highs. At 48.50. Top test in between. I would add that lose these H4 200 MA, X8 400 retest ink. Continuation, of course, if this breaks. I don't see a clear setup on this right now. I guess we could have an argument for something like this. At least. I guess this could be an idea. I don't know if that's the kind of setup I would take. Maybe I'm gonna come back to this chart in 2 days and it's gonna be another setup I missed. I guess if there is a setup to take in the short term, it could be something like this. Maybe something different in terms of invalidation, and maybe you want to have a more aggressive entry. But even if it was just to capture the move back to the local highs, that would remain a 5-6% move to capture. It's more than decent. So yeah, that could be one setup to think about. I will be sharing the chat request on Telegram for those who want charts covered during the stream. I need to share H1, H4 daily, ZEC H4, ZEC daily, Avente H4, and this is hype H4. And I'm gonna cover hype daily also. Someone is not happy of me going live, unfortunately. Too bad. Here's the link for the Telegram if you're not in and you want to have access to the chat request covered today. Okay, let's do hype daily. I don't know if I have a chart for the daily. I do. On daily, to me, it's pretty straightforward. Confluence of daily 100 main daily trend. Basically, this entire block. This fits with the idea that if we lose H4 trend short term, You want to see the H4 EMA lower to be defended. So yeah, not very complicated. Okay. I would definitely keep my focus on Bitcoin short term though. Huh? As we discussed, we are discussing shitcoins right now, not shitcoins. I mean, people are gonna be mad at me if I say that IP is a shitcoin. But we are discussing altcoins right now, but obviously, at least for the next 12 hours and maybe more with the Trump and Xi meeting, focus should probably be more towards Bitcoin and the H4 100 MA region as we discussed. Okay, so that's it for hype. I'm not taking new chat requests, guys. I'm sorry, as I said, I still need to cover these before the end of the stream, and the stream should be already over. So, yeah. Okay, TAO looks decent. What was the question for TAO? Maybe you said something in particular. Could you please discuss TAO? From what I see, it's respecting H4 trends. It is, but it has not particularly been the cleanest in terms of H4 trend. Lost, reclaimed, lost, shopping around it. It's decent. It's decent. There are definitely worse looking charts right now on H4 across the board. Maybe daily paints a more interesting story, which is the case. Is it gonna be this time of the year where TAO pumps and people pretend that TAO is the future of AI? Like 2 or 3 times per day per year we've had over the last 2 years. Fairly obvious must break. I don't think I need to explain this one, sorry. Plus daily trends. Maybe it compressed some more. Kinda reminds me of what I would want to see on Zcash on H4. If you remember what I said on Zcash on H4. I said that if we had this kind of compression between the highs and the trends, it could be an interesting setup to chase. Could be the case on daily for TAO. I'm not a turbo big fan of positioning on daily trend, mostly because I don't know where I would put my stops. Likely below H4 200 MA, but would not particularly be the easiest and cleanest one to take. But still, that would likely be something like this. That's 440 up to 460. Yeah. So potential trades, as I said, a daily trend retest. As I said, also a little bit tricky in terms of invalidation, but can likely use H4 200 MA as an invalidation. You can long H4 200 MA and cut if it's not defended, for example. Second one, obviously, is as I said on SEC H4, a daily trend plus must break compression. just like we discussed it for AVNT this last week, for those from the Haven, you can go partial size, like partial entry in the compression and increase if we break out, obviously. And 3, wait for a break of local resistance. Tricky part here, obviously, being if it doesn't give a retest. If that's the case, maybe can zoom into H4 and see if H4 trend defended or not. Looking at the chart, to me, these are probably the most obvious trades to take, with the tricky part for each. Just like I said for ZEC, I think I would be more interested in a longing compression like this between daily trend and resistance, or a breakout. And the argument for that is just what I discussed. If you long daily trend retests, it's a little bit tricky in terms of validation, because it sucks to get out of a position so close to main moving averages and to what has been a strong horizontal level. While if you play a daily trend plus resistance compression, you can have a much higher invalidation. It just makes more sense to me, just like for this one, obviously. So yeah, probably this kind of setups, but I would focus on daily more than on H4 for Arab Guard. I would play this more. So just to be clear, not definitive setups. And I will precise that I would likely favor the setups 2 and 3. And in my opinion, obviously, you want to see BTC defending 113 for confidence. Maybe TAO can be one of those coins that doesn't need Bitcoin to be strong to make its moves. It proved it in the past, where it had rallies without Bitcoin doing necessarily good. But still, it's always a good confluence to know that you are inclined to add some risk on the table when you see Bitcoin at least not cheating the bed, obviously. So yeah, probably something like this. In any cases, as long as daily trend is defended and as long as we have this kind of structure, I think you want to be looking for longs. TIO is also this kind of coin that, as I said, tends to have some rallies here and there where you can benefit from it. In terms of targets, I would say that probably this level is a decent one. If we look back at the price action over the past 2 years, over the past year actually, it's been a year that this level has been acting as resistance. So yeah, probably something like this for me on TAO. I don't think I have it on my watch list, so I'm gonna add it to the watch list, but it's an interesting looking one. I don't think I've had a lot of success trading TAO in the past, but still, maybe this time. Let me before I forget, let me put the charts in the Telegram, because I will shut the stream and forget later, so I might as well do it now, so that I'm sure that I don't forget. H4. Daily. ZEC H4. What a time to be alive when Zcash is the strongest coin to focus on in the market. That was not on my bingo card at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of the year. I'm not gonna lie. I hope it benefits my. I hope it continues because it's nice to trade, and I hope it continues and it can benefit my Monero bags, even if I, in any cases, don't intend to touch them or trade them or whatever. Okay, next one. Let's do Zen and Dash. Man, last time I traded Dash, I think it was in 2018. I remember watching the charts. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago in the event because someone asked me to watch the charts. But I think we noticed that I got wrecked on Dash some time ago and basically never looked back. These were 2023. I think I used this for for educational article or something like this, and then I never looked back. The memory I have with Dash is that when I joined the market in 2017, I was in this group chat with my brother, and there was this one guy who introduced us all basically to crypto more precisely than just Bitcoin, and he was extremely bullish Dash and Lisk. Is Lisk still a thing? He was extremely bullish on Lisk, and actually you still have a drawing from me in the charts in 2020. Where is it? Over here. This is me from the past doing this. God only knows why I had this on the charts. But yeah, it's the main memory I have from Dash is that this guy was very bullish Dash and Lisk. He was long Dash from the day it was called Dark Coin. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. Okay, it's a good looking chart on the daily. This is a good example of what I discussed earlier when I said that I try to usually check where there is a trend, if there is any trend, and where it's defended, and stick to this time frame. And in that case, you can see that H4 chart on Dash is pretty chaotic, while the daily chart paints a much cleaner story. So it actually reminds me a lot of the hype H4 charts. Was 2020 Pierre already cooking? 2020 Pierre was starting to cook quite nicely, I would say. 2017 was just lucky and unable to sell. 2018 was absolutely wrecked. 2019 was starting to get it. 2020 was starting to cook quite nicely. In 2019, it's the moment we really hard grinded with Krillin and a few others on City. And it's the moment it really started to make sense for me on many levels in terms of trends and things like this. And it's the time we were starting to fight with moving averages based bots on UOB. And 2020 was the beginning of a very, very good run for me, fueled by Seal back in the days, for those who remember, where Seal basically printed a times 25, and I was pretty early to it, just based off moving averages reversing on higher time frame. And it's really from there that it started to cook quite nicely. Still made an incalculable amount of mistakes ever since, obviously, but I would say that it's the moment where I really started to click for me, and where I started to take things more seriously and be much more humbled when it comes to the markets and how rapidly it can make you, but also break you. Okay, so as I said, it reminds me a lot of the hype H4 chart that we discussed earlier, where we have a fight for the trends and clear level of resistance plus support that you want to see defended. In the case of Zcash, it's a fairly wide range. Obviously, we are talking about a 20% daily range, but I guess it's pretty straightforward. Must break, I don't think I need to explain this one. And daily trend X D1 support obviously must hold. So just like we discussed for I, you want to see the daily trend still being defended. I think that if it comes for this region, once again, you have a good argument to long because the invalidation would be very good. That would be the confluence of losing a support plus losing the daily trends. So to me, it's likely an interesting long to take. I think you can even be less aggressive with the entry. And then just like we discussed for TAO daily, can also play a compression, can also play a breakout. So I feel like I could just copy past what I just said for TAO, basically. Which is what I'm going to do, because I need to hurry up. But okay, I will bend the knee and add Dash back to my watch list for the first time since 2017. And I'm actually gonna set some alerts because I could very well take this setup over here. I'm saying that because if you remember at the beginning of the stream, or during the stream, I said that to me, the clearer the invalidation, the more I'm interested in the setup because the less my monkey brain can fuck the plan. Because if an invalidation is straightforward, I will not find reasons to say, yes, but what if? I will just stick to the plan. If there is any doubt in my plan, I know that my monkey brain is going to make me do mistakes. While if the invalidation is straightforward, I cannot trick my brain. I cannot go against my plan. Even my monkey brain has to respect it. And in that case, we have the confluence of daily trend plus clear resistance, clear support. It's a good enough invalidation in my opinion. And I don't think I'm the only one in that case, obviously. Salut le plus beau, hello 5O Trading, how are you man? It's exactly, it's a 1-1 what we discussed on TAO. Okay. Obviously, if we are thinking about markets breaking down, lose this, flip daily trend resistance, and you have a gap fill to daily 200 MA and daily 110, which could be a nice shot also, obviously. Okay. Look how I'm being spammed by shit even on Telegram. Don't even know these people. I don't even know these people. Okay. And then I would assume maybe looks similar. Less, but very weaky. I mean, this is the daily, right? This is 10-10. Okay. I guess it looks similar in the sense of things you want to see defended, local highs plus daily trends. It looks a little bit less clean and more trappy to me. Maybe it's because maybe there are charts where it's more less. No. So yeah, but I'm not going to go into too many details, but I will just say 1-1 dash and TAO D1 thoughts looks trappier, less clean to play than dash. If looking for a ZEG beta. I will also say one thing when it comes to playing beta, because if you guys are asking me about Dash and Zen, I would assume it's because you want to play Zcash betas. My lesson when it comes to playing betas is that unless you have a fundamental reason to focus on anything else but the main leader of the trends, don't do it. I'm not saying that these won't outperform Zcash on pumping or whatever, but personally, my rule is that when I'm focused on the trend and the narrative, I try to focus mostly on what's leading the trends and do well on the trend leader. No, even if it pumped already, you don't care. You don't care if something pumped already. It doesn't mean anything. When Zcash was at $80, you had the argument to say it pumped already also. In the past, I learned that lesson with the sushi and uni trades. I think it was 2020 or 2021. Maybe it was 2021. Sorry. Yeah. I saw sushi went from sub $1 to 25. And I had some exposure to sushi, but because I felt late, I tried to compensate by being more long uni than sushi, and it pumped also. It was quite well. In the same time, I think it's the moment it pumped from 4 to 30. More than decent. But I burned myself over trading uni instead of just focusing on sushi. And it was a big lesson for me to stick to what leads the narrative more than anything else. And I saw sushi vastly outperform uni in that same window. And ever since, I've always tried to stick to the trend leader, basically. And maybe there are going to be cases where this is not the most efficient approach, but yeah. Do whatever you want, obviously, but just my lesson with playing betas is this one: is that try to do well, focusing on what's leading the narrative first, and if you have profits you want to pivot into a beta that you think can outperform, obviously do so, but be riding the leading narrative first and well often is good enough. Okay, TTWO, it's Tradfi. As I always do, I check where the trend has been the most clean, and it seems to be the weekly. I think it's Ademo who asked me to check that. So I don't know if you're still around, Ademo, but if you're still around, I would say if you want to play this one, set some alerts at weekly 32 EMA and beat it until it doesn't work anymore, as it's been defended for the last year. Maybe you don't get this retest, maybe it happens higher and later, but weekly 32 EMA seems to be a good place to put a gamble on this one. Don't have much to add to this. And meanwhile, SPX printing Otama and Otama, and we are playing with our poop. All right. Okay. Let's take a look at ETH because it's been asked. I had this on the chat the other day. Not a setup that I'm in. I think it was on the weekly. It's from last week's stream also in the Haven. I was discussing what kind of setup I would take on if I had to take a setup. The reason I was saying that is because I don't want to focus on ETH over Bitcoin until it's back above daily trend and daily 100 MA. If/when it is, it's likely that just like for the last, basically since May, I will be focused more on ETH than Bitcoin. But as long as it's below daily trend and daily 100 MA against Bitcoin, sorry, I'm just not focused on it. Wait, I'm adjusting the chart a little bit. But there is one thing that we noticed with Aven members last week when we covered it. And it was this this potential weekly trend, weekly 100 MA compression. Do you remember the AVNT H4 chart? I'm not saying that if BTC is going to do that, obviously, but if we add a weekly EMA, a weekly structure where we have a weekly trend defended, weekly 100 MA acting as resistance on ETH BTC and Bitcoin not cheating the bed, maybe there's a world where we have a spike on ETH BTC up to 0.045, 0.50 to fill these gaps, like AVNT did on H4. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that this is something that we watched last week with the Aven lads, and maybe that we can keep an eye on. And after that, I discussed that if there was any setup to take, the one that makes sense for me would be something like this, because weekly trend retest plus 4 years resistance retest, basically. So if there is a place for ETH to be strong and to show some strength, it's on this retest right now. If it fails to do so, it's likely kept for quite some time. How do you play ETH BTC? Yeah, when I say that, I'm not playing the pair itself. Just for me, it means that if I see strength on the market, I will favor longing ETH over Bitcoin. That's it. But I'm not going to be long ETH, short Bitcoin or whatever. I'm only watching the ETH BTC pair to know on which one between the two I want to focus more if I'm looking for longs, basically. Or looking for shorts, actually, but you get the point. I'm just using it as a trigger to know which one I want to focus on more than the other. It's basically the way I avoided playing ETH since May over the last 2 years, as long as it was stuck below the daily and weekly trends, which avoided me a lot of brain damages. But I'm always happy to get back to ETH over Bitcoin, because maybe I'm a boomer, but I still believe that ETH being strong is a good indicator of risk across the board. Maybe it's a very boomer take to have, but it's my take. I'm a boomer now. So yeah, this is the main setup I could see when it comes to ETH. Simply because if you fail to flip this support and hold this support, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. But yeah, it's pretty much that. So I have not been particularly watching anything else on ETH. I know that last week we discussed a little bit the fight with at the beginning of the week. Sorry, we discussed a little bit of the fight for H1 trend and things like this. But I didn't have any focus on it. We discussed this last week also. Never took the setup, was not clean enough. But just I'm going to finish then with the weekly chart on Bitcoin, and then I will shut the stream off. Just to discuss when I discussed this with the Aven lads last week, one of the main things I said is that I want to trust these retests, because in terms of horizontal levels, it makes sense. It's been such a strong level for ETH since 2021, so 4 fucking years. But I would have loved to have the weekly trend to trust with it. Do you remember what I said for the daily chart and for the daily trends on Bitcoin? I said that to me, this daily trend fight that we had was not very significant because the daily trend was not particularly well defended over the past few months, and that therefore I don't put too much strength in this fight for daily trends. I value the 111, 113 horizontal level much more than the daily trend itself. Well, on the weekly chart for ETH, we can see that this could be the first weekly trend retest, but at the same time, since 2024, it's been violated a few times. Lost it, instant reclaim, lost it, reclaim. Now we are fighting for it, but we don't know how much strength we can put into this retest. So to me, this would be more of a simple horizontal level retest than a weekly trend retest. What this means is that even if you don't take this setup, but we have weekly trend defended, then you have a good argument higher to look for longs, very likely. So if you take a setup like this, to me, it's more of a gamble on the weekly trend, on the horizontal level, than the weekly trend itself. But yeah, it's the only, until ETH BTC can reclaim daily trend and daily 100 MA, if there is a setup I would take on ETH, it's this one and not another. But for that, we will need Bitcoin to behave and start showing some strength in this region quite nicely, quite rapidly, I should say. Otherwise, all right, that's it for the stream. I was supposed to stream 1 hour 40 minutes. We streamed for 1 hour and 30 minutes. So I'm gonna shut the stream off now. I'm gonna share this final chart in the Telegram. All right, so as I said, you can find the charts that we covered on the stream all in the Telegram. You have the link for the Telegram in the chat. I will share it again. You can go back to all these charts if you want. This is everything that we covered today. And that's it for me. Keep in mind a few things, in my opinion. The fight for H for 100 MA on an overall 110.5, 111.5 going into post-FOMC. Whether this gets defended or flip resistance likely tells a much different story of what you could expect in the short term. So basically for me, we hold that, at least we are good to chop. We lose it, I think we revisit the 107, 108 region. Take your time. You can very much, in my opinion, you can very much come back tomorrow and trade whatever the market has decided to do post-FOMC. There is a good argument to even just wait post-Trump and Xi meeting. If you feel like missing out, just zoom out a little bit. We are at the same prices we've been since May 2025. You are likely not missing out on shit. So take your time. As I spammed and discussed a lot through the stream, if you take anything, make sure that you have invalidations, you know you can trust, and you know you're not going to that you're not going to doubt, and that you're not going to second think, double think, overthink. I don't know how to say it in English. 1 hour and a half speaking in English and my brain is fried. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much for joining the stream. As usual, extremely likely that I do another public stream next week. I don't know which day yet, but obviously I will keep you guys updated. And thank you very much for joining, for the question, for the chat request. It's been a good one once again. And yeah, take your time, be careful.